Hello and welcome to the Brand Hunch podcast, where we explore ideas and hunches around how marketers are growing great brands. It's a look under the hood at how much is marketing science and how much is built on a hunch. This episode is in partnership with Tracksuit, a beautiful, affordable and always-on brand tracking tool that helps marketers and agencies answer the age-old question, is my strategy working? It's not enough to talk about great creative or reach. Your CFO wants proof that your campaigns are driving growth with the segments who actually matter. Tracksuit makes it all possible without the six-figure price tag. In just 30 days, you'll have a live dashboard tracking your brand health over time, benchmarking you against competitors and surfacing boardroom-ready insights. We at Shallow use Tracksuit. Many of our guests on the podcast have used Tracksuit. It's a really, really great tool. If you can't prove your brand campaigns have worked, you risk losing your budget. No! And if you can, you unlock growth. Check them out at gotracksuit.com. Today, my guest is Catherine Dix, Managing Director at waterdrop Australia, New Zealand. If you don't know waterdrop, it's a hydration brand best known for its sugar-free cubes, which dissolve and flavour your water. They also do drink bottles, which we'll get right into. Their mission is to encourage healthier, sustainable hydration habits while reducing single-use plastic waste. Globally, and based out of Vienna, Austria, they've been around for 10 years with over 400 employees. Locally in Australia, they've been around for just 3 years, headed up by Kat, who before this was COO at Web Profits, a digital growth agency for D2C businesses. It's the ultimate Brand Hunch show story, from a data-rich background to backing a hunch and launching waterdrop here in Australia. I met Kat through our wonderful clients at Klaviyo, and I know you're going to love this story. Kat, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Linz.
So let's start at Web Profits. Tell me a bit about your, 14 years-ish there. Tell me a bit about the agency. What did you do? What did you learn along the way?
Yeah, look, I think it's always so good, like working agency side, you get to learn so much, so fast. And then also kind of grew my career, my understanding of marketing. I started in like SEO, literally kind of looking at, search engine optimization. And then just very quickly kind of realized that ultimately my skills are best with kind of understanding marketing principles, but working with clients, leading teams and, being able to kind of see the big picture. And I just loved working with lots of different brands and being able to see how people ran their businesses, what worked, what didn't work with really, really smart marketers was also extremely rewarding. And then I just think nothing's slow. 14 years kind of went really fast.
What's different about D2C brands specifically than other, retail or other organizations?
Yeah, look, I think you can scale, like being able to see the scale that you can do. So we had brands that we were working with in Australia and then fully globally. So you were able just really to be able to understand kind of how people could mix that channel and grow fast. That was fantastic. Being able to see some of the challenges of people and how teams operate, different size teams as well, was really interesting for me. You work with businesses who rely completely on agencies or businesses that are trying to do everything in-house or they take things in-house. And so I learned a lot of just operationally, and how to run our agency itself. Operations was my piece that I was looking after. But being able to get kind of inside lots of different businesses, there was a lot to be learned there.
And did you always have an itch you wanted to scratch to kind of go out and do it on your own from a product perspective, or was it just an opportunity that came about?
No, I mean, I think I vowed to multiple people at different points that I didn't call myself an entrepreneur and would never want to have my own product or business. And now I'm running a business in Australia, but I didn't create the product, Lynn. So operationally, I love being able to work with other people that are really talented and then be able to operationally run that. So I guess that hasn't changed. But yeah, the opportunity was a surprise. Like if kind of 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I'd be sat here doing this.
So tell me about it. How did it come about?
Yeah, look, it was a moment in time. I was over in Europe and we connected with the product and kind of connected through friends of friends around with the founders. And we're talking about, if they would ever expand into Australia. And conversations just kind of moved that then actually Australia became an opportunity. And again, I didn't kind of necessarily see myself as taking it on, but there's moments in life where you just know that you need something different and you need new challenges. And I was ready for a new challenge. And I then just kind of fell in love with the product.
And so when did it go from, this is interesting to, okay, I'm doing this? What was that moment like for you?
It went from us going, okay, we're going to go ahead and start looking at how we're going to launch this in Australia. Let's see how it works. Let's start it with digital. So we can probably do that because there's myself and a couple of other directors. So from a kind of like a skills upfront perspective, we were like, look, we kind of, we've got the agency experience, like we can use the agency to help us do these things. Let's just start to see how it goes. And then Lindsay, I just loved it. Like operationally, then I just found myself finding that I wanted to be seeing what we were doing with stock. I wanted to be involved in ordering. I wanted to just be kind of doing it. And kind of it was within probably a month or two that suddenly we were having conversations as directors to say, actually, I think this could be something that I run, and just gradually kind of step out of the role that I was doing at Web Profits.
It must have been pretty compelling if you'd said not too long before that, I'll never go out and have my own product and, be a true sort of entrepreneur, to then this point where you're a localized entrepreneur. You're still launching and running a whole new brand and organization in the local region. What shifted between then and now?
Yeah, I feel really different. So that's, I guess, quite interesting from it in and of itself. I love a challenge and growth. And it's, when you have this opportunity that you can kind of build something, that's just so exciting. And that opportunity to do something. I guess the reality is also, Lindsay, that I've spent a long time working with other people's businesses. And there are moments where that can also be frustrating, where you kind of saying, actually, I'm ready to I would like to make these decisions. And if this was my business, I'd like to do it like this, or I would have done it maybe like this, or you kind of want to be able to see if you can, what you can see as opportunities, you can put those into practice. So I guess that probably was my turning point without having fully realizing that.
I so relate to that. As an agency, you see so many projects and types of brands and types of marketers. There's definitely an element of, could I do this myself? If I was tasked with the same business problems, would I approach it in the same way as people that we work with on the other side of the table?
Yeah, and then I see all the time as well that I'm like the worst, most frustrating client ever,
You know too much.
I'm like, oh gosh, what are your goals? Do you know your goals? Do you have your budgets? I'm like, yeah, but what do you think? And then I'm like, oh gosh, that also...
So give me the practicalities. You launched about 3 years ago into Australia. What kind of, whether it was assets or ideas or whether it's brand constraints or opportunities, what did you have in your sort of secret kit? It's like ready, steady, cook. What elements did you have to work with? And I guess what was on the table for you to create?
Yeah, so look, I think the joy of us being able to have scaled and grown very fast in market is that all of the framework foundations, so ultimately the team in Vienna, Austria, Shopify Plus, straight off the bat, fantastic, beautiful website. It was about choosing what products. All of those assets existed, even reviews, So we were able to take global reviews and say, trusted by 2 million consumers 3 years ago, it's now 5 million. But, to be able to kind of immediately launch with all of those trust points and a website that has a proven conversion rate, that's something that that's no small feat. You
can't manufacture that overnight.
No, absolutely.
And what about from an opportunity perspective? Did you then have free reign, or what did you have free reign over?
Channels, how do we want to grow it? And that was kind of always a conversation that the founders, there's Martin, Henry and Christoph in Austria, was always we've got a really good relationship, and I've got a really kind of probably WhatsApp Martin and Henry most days, and kind of very early on would talk lots. But the channel mix was very much, they kind of said, look, the market, you've got to do this, and it's your P&L and it's your budgets and it's all of those things of, how you want to try and do it. So we just started just saying, let's just do pure online. We just do pure play, just online only to start.
And I guess that's what right, from your background.
Absolutely. And go with what you know. And then that was where we started to kind of build and scale and put all of those foundations in. And so, but it was a while before we kind of started doing sampling events or retail or things like that. We just said, let's actually just get in market. Let's get some trust. Let's get some consumers. Let's talk to people and also stay in the strengths, because there was so much that we didn't know.
And did you use digital channels early on to test and learn from a messaging positioning perspective? Did global messaging and the global positioning work off the bat here, or have you had to tweak that along the way?
Yeah, there's definitely been there's a few kind of videos, formulas that have definitely worked globally, that are kind of some of our best top things that definitely kind of translate, that we've been able to use. But we did have to do lots of new testing of messaging. And then you're doing different proof points as well, because again, we're new in market, so no one does know you. And there's also, I feel like there's been, it goes through waves of people thinking that ads are scams. Like, how do you not look like a scam or this business? So kind of just trying to really make sure that it did feel localized and that we were actually getting proof points through from Australian customers.
Have there been any things that have surprised you about Australian consumers, even though you're obviously in the local market and you know Australian culture much more than global people would? Has there been anything that's surprised you?
Look, I mean, this didn't necessarily surprise me. It surprised Austria. People do not understand how attached Australians are to water bottles.
How funny.
Like the attachment and the trend, and like that it's part of like outfits and your day and your routine. Like water bottles are such a big thing here.
They're an extension of your identity.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that whole kind of, like that emotional water bottle trend and all those pieces, I don't think anyone had fully really comprehended in Austria how competitive that market was in Australia.
So give me a bit of an overview. The waterdrop brand, I alluded in the introduction that you're known for hydration, but you've also got other products. Give me a quick overview.
Yeah, look, we call ourselves a sustainable hydration brand. The goal is to help you drink more water. And our mission as a brand is to reduce plastic waste. Like we all know that plastic's not good for the environment. And so we've got a combination of kind of solutions, which is one piece is sustainable drinkware, your drink bottles. But the other piece is then these hydration cubes, which are also sugar-free. So we kind of sometimes talk about this concept of like sugar plastic, like reduce just all of the sugar that's in all of these plastic drink bottles as well. So both things people know are issues for society. And so our cubes are offering people hydration. They help them drink more without the sugar and without all of the plastic waste. So that offering is something we feel really proud of, and it links to the mission. And I think all of us kind of came into Australia saying, well, gosh, Australia cares. The Australian lifestyle, it's outdoors. We have beautiful tap water here. People care about health conscious living. And we do have an obesity problem on the flip. So also kind of, there's a good opportunity here to make a mark and have an impact.
Are there any global products you haven't launched locally? And if so, why?
Look, there are some things from just different ingredient pieces that we haven't. Global has a lot more energy products. There's a lot more tighter regulations in Australia for some of those energy products. And at one point they started going down drink tech. That was a route that they were looking at. So kind of, like that kind of tracking and things like that. And then the decision was made that we're not a tech company. So that was I kind of came in at a good time of being like, actually, that product's not going to go live here, and just focus on what your core product range is, which is the hydration cubes and bottles.
So you operate in two different categories. You've got the cubes and then you've got the actual bottles, or the infrastructure, I guess, that sit around them. Are they often sold together, or are they true independent products standalone?
Yeah, look, I think a recurring customer base entirely looks at us as hydration cubes. And I think it depends on how people discover us as a business. People might discover us through the drinkware and then they kind of discover the hydration cubes, but the majority of our advertising focuses on the hydration cubes up front. What we do know from data, and you could have a hunch about this, but this is proven data, which is great, is that if someone purchases a waterdrop bottle and the hydration cubes, they're a much stickier, loyal customer long term.
They're also advertising for you everywhere they take the bottle.
Absolutely. And advertising to themselves that they're like just sat looking at the waterdrop logo being like, oh, I should drink more water. Oh yeah, waterdrop. So all of those things, it's a really nice synergy, and they go really well hand in hand. And, we've had great feedback on it, but we call ourselves a hydration business, and that incorporates all those nice pieces around all the accoutrements of hydration, right?
Yeah, it's great. One of the best things that you're known for locally is your partnership with the Australian Open. It's probably one of your most talked about moves. Tell me a bit about getting HQ on board. Was it something they understood and did locally themselves, or was this a little bit of a left of centre move for you here locally?
Yeah, great question. We're a partner with the Australian Open, and we turned up. We'd been less than a year in market in Australia, and we were set up at the Australian Open with Australian Open bottles as this kind of first piece. And then by the following year, we became an official partner. Ultimately, our global strategy is to be involved in tennis. The HQ team and the Austrian team were super supportive of it, and they've led the way in those engagements and worked lots with athletes and tennis stars and done lots in tennis tournaments in Europe beforehand. What was really fun is, I think, just from a global perspective of again, where global brands work and why global brands would work also with the Australian Open, because it is a grand slam, so it's not just an Australian tournament, it's on a global stage, the conversation pinged literally from Sydney to Vienna to New York to people meeting up at the US Open in New York in a coffee shop, to it going back to Sydney, Double Bay coffee shop, literally just kind of pinged around the world of us having conversations and then kind of bringing it together. that was quite a beautiful way of actually it being this seen as, this global partnership. Everyone asked everyone for a number of months, Linz, if we thought it was a good idea. We were all asking each other.
And so what made you back it in the end?
To be involved in a Grand Slam is something wildly special. And there is just huge brand recognition and sense of trust. And there's so many different things I think you can do as a brand or choose to invest in. But to be able to choose to kind of invest in a known entity that has a fantastic platform is a great opportunity. I now know so much more about all the different sporting codes and all of the different brand partnerships and investments. But you also can see how people can pay a lot of money for something on one side and not enough money somewhere else. And that whole world, Linz, I think is like very complex. So there were still a lot of unknowns, but it felt like it made total sense to us. And I think that probably the biggest piece, actually, if we go to it, the core of the partnership came from this core desire to remove plastic on court. So it didn't just feel like it's a brand marketing move. It didn't feel like a sponsorship move. It was absolutely at its core a value-driven move that aligned entirely with our whole purpose as a business. And to have that kind of handed to you as like, here is the opportunity. Do you want to remove? And it's 97,000 plastic bottles from on court in one Grand Slam at the Australian Open. So do you want to be that partner that helps us do that? That's landmark ability to remove so much plastic from the environment.
I feel like purpose washing or kind of having a purpose that, does good from a marketing perspective throughout the last decade has gone through a real wave and has risen and sort of equally fallen. Sounds like what you're tapping into is just business sense. You're actually doing good, and it just so happens that it's, a core part of the brand as opposed to marketing leading an initiative that maybe doesn't have the same data behind it.
Totally, because that is nuts, right? Because people continue to try to be like, oh, we're doing that for this. And it's like, are you? That just sounds like you just decided to sponsor that and you're trying to link up why you might.
Retrofit.
Retrofit it, absolutely. So with this, it ticks the boxes. It was like, how do we then, we're on stage at the Australian Open with one of our core products, and we're also doing good for the environment and like fulfilling their sustainability initiatives, which they take so seriously as well as a market leader. So, really, really cool partnership to be able to be a part of that.
So you came obviously from a performance marketing background. How did you personally reconcile the sort of need to grow top of funnel or brand awareness and invest in brand building when there might not be that, or there often isn't that immediate return to point to?
Yes, that was really scary, to be fair, because it's a really big bet. And it was the timing felt very scary, because it was almost that it was like, is it too soon of what we're doing in market?
Did you say it was 1 year in?
Yeah, that conversation started. I think conversation started 6 months into us being in market. But I think we were able to test. We did a smaller test case in 2024, we did a smaller test case, Linz. And then you were able to kind of see the power of the brand partnership. And that gave me confidence to kind of say, actually, okay, we can see this. And it is a big bet. But also this feels like a very strong alignment. And if we are strategic in other areas, and I think that's the bit of the way that it's worked for us, is probably we said yes to that and we said no to 100 other things.
From what I know about the waterdrop brand from an external perspective, you've got a sort of higher income family focus. You've also got obviously your hydration core benefit. I guess layering both of those over a global tennis involvement in tennis globally, it sort of makes sense from all angles, the partnership with AO.
Yeah, it does. And they're great to work with. And that's really kind of aligned. But certainly we could have just, and people have always said to me, and it's one of those interesting ones of just kind of, once you do one thing with brand, our partnership at that level, everyone's like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And you kind of just go, that's huge in itself.
Totally.
Just there's so much that you can do with it. And how do you do that really well? The success is as much as anything of that we really put everything behind that to make sure we did get everything from it, because just doing it and kind of ticking that box or doing that piece wasn't going to be enough. Like, it really needs continued strategic thought of how to leverage it.
And so for the big brand moments at the AO, did you just go out with waterdrop logos everywhere, or was there a sort of key line, or what was the top of funnel positioning you were going after?
Yeah, waterdrop logo. In the first year, it was about the brand recognition on site primarily. So we got broadcast value from, that people are seeing players drinking the waterdrop bottles. we've used headlines around like Ace Your Hydration has been a piece that kind of, again, is, a very classic tennis, serving up hydration, all of those different pieces. But I think where we really focused was on the PR piece around removing plastic. Yeah. And if you were on site, we had water stations as well, Lynn. So that was the other bit.
Looking back on the partnership to date, how do you know it's been successful?
Look, it's been successful because we know it's how we're building brand equity in market. So we've put in things, there's sales that we've made at the Australian Open. So there is revenue data that we have from the Australian Open. We've done different tracking pieces. So we've now got Tracksuit that's set up, and we're using Tracksuit in terms of our brand tracking metrics for bottles and for drinks, electrolytes. So we're now able to actually see how we've moved the needle year on year with that. So that's super important. And we've previously also done things like that kind of post-purchase survey checkout with Triple Whale, asking how people discovered you. And we have different customer surveys. So we've kind of always tried to, at every different point, like kind of really every quarter, make sure that we're reviewing and analysing where people entered from as a brand. Like, did they discover or buy something at the Australian Open, or where did they find us, or where did they see us, and getting as much data as we can on that, which does tell us it was good.
Tick.
Which tells us it's working. Tick, yeah.
You mentioned before Tracksuit and brand tracking. I assume you've carved out 2 different competitor sets for the bottles and the hydration tablets. Tell me a bit about that, and when did you set it up? How did you know it was the right time to invest in brand tracking?
Yeah, well, my joke is that I probably, I was like one of their longest, I don't know, I talked to them for so long before we officially took it on, because when was the right time? Because the reality is, we didn't need brand tracking when no one knows who you are in Australia. But as soon as we basically had committed to kind of being an official partner, we knew that we needed to be able to have structures in place to be able to measure that journey. And that was kind of the critical piece of just saying, you choose to invest at a high level in a partnership, it would be remiss to not be able to track that journey. And then from my side, I love that software, that it can be intuitive, easily like a login dashboard, that you can see it and get that data out of it really easily. That was kind of a big piece from my side. I also saw other brands that I knew and liked and talked to of people who were using it, and kind of got good feedback of like other partners, for example, at the AO using it, and then being able to say, look, it helps us make these decisions.
Your awareness in Australia is sitting around 12%, I believe. You're competing against Hydrolyte at a whopping 75%. When you look at the gap and you look at the dashboard every week when you're logging in to see how you're tracking, how do you stop it from feeling demoralizing and instead use it as a strategic tool?
Yeah, I think I had an hour, maybe it was like a post-Australian Open come down in February, where I was like looking at this dashboard and data and being like, oh gosh, we've put so much energy and effort in. It's just really helpful because it's not demoralizing, because the reality is that you can also fall into a bubble. And I think marketers and strategists and creatives, we all and people talk about it as well on LinkedIn, everyone talking about the Levi's logo being covered up at the World Cup. But it's like, that's just our marketing bubble of our world talking about it. And the random consumer doesn't know or care. And they have no idea what's going on, and probably wouldn't even recognize that it was a Levi's logo covered up. What I like about Tracksuit is that it's not our customers. It's just a piece, and you can talk to customers and they can tell you that they see you everywhere and they love you, and you can see all these different facts from people who know you and are surrounded, or they're like nonstop in tennis. And you really need just completely agnostic. You need just completely, they're not coming to you as they already know all of this context. So that I just find really refreshing. And that's the reality. And that honestly just makes me really excited, Lindsay, about the amount that I can grow the business, because we've not even touched the surface in Australia. Absolutely.
And getting to 12% in 3 years is incredible in an established category. Obviously, a large part of product success is distribution and accessibility, people being able to purchase the product when they need it. How have you thought about retail distribution? Obviously, your time at Web Profits was D2C, and now coming into retail. You operate in 2 very distinct categories. How do you describe that? How do you work with retailers? What are the opportunities there?
I think retail is wildly complex, and I knew it was very complex 3 years ago, and I've learnt so much in the last few years. But one of the things I've also learnt is everything that I don't know and I won't know. And one of the best things that I did in the last 3 years was hiring a very senior B2B retail experience marketer who's got lots of experience in grocery. And he's fantastic on our team. So that was kind of something that we just absolutely had to have from a skill set perspective. But I think in terms of retail, it's cutthroat, it's really hard. And again, people and general consumers don't understand how difficult it is to get on shelf, how difficult it is to continue to be on shelf, and how much all of that costs and how long all of it takes. So I think I'm quite pleased. Timing wise, I think we did it at the right time. We launched in Woolworths last September. But that was like a year, it's like a 12-month process to be able to make that happen. And we needed it to happen at a time when we had enough brand recognition in market to then also ensure that it is like a resounding success and that the buyer's happy and all of those different pieces. So I think timing was our biggest question mark. And because it's got such long time frames as well, that's really scary when you're looking at your P&L and kind of saying we want to be doing this. But like if everything takes 6 months to decide and then another 6 months to get in, every month does count, even if it is long. So that's been really challenging. And that's definitely kept me awake at night a number of times over the last few years.
Through that lens, is there anything you would have done differently launching into Australia, knowing how hard retail has been? Would you have changed anything doing it again?
I probably understanding maybe a little bit more some of the opportunities of how we could learn faster was good, but we had to take risks and have trusted partners. The best thing was that there was experience that we could leverage from Austria, but it's still very different. In the way supermarkets and like it's set up is again very different. They don't have these, they don't have a duopoly. There was learnings, but we had to kind of really get to grips with what would work for us here in Australia. I think probably the one thing that I'm happy that I did, and I don't realize how much I didn't at the time maybe realize how strategic it was that we didn't allow really anyone to take us on shelf. So even though people were asking to take us on shelf in the first year, we just kind of made it a rule that we wouldn't actually do any distribution to smaller retailers, independent retailers, or any of those pieces until we were ready to go large. But that felt risky as well, like knowing what you should be saying yes to and knowing what you should hold on.
Your brand leads the entire category on encourages healthier habits ahead of everyone else, but somehow that's potentially not translating into the trust or the lifestyle fit at the same rate. What's the gap between being seen as the healthy choice and being seen as the trusted choice? Is it a brand problem or is it just a time in market problem?
I think it's a combination. I think it's that people want us to be one category. They want us to be one thing and we're not. And ultimately, we're taking on Goliaths, like lots of different brands and lots of different people in market can look at us. Anyone who has a beverage, anyone who has any kind of drinkware accessory could say we're a competitor. So because we cross a lot of different markets, a lot of different competitors, that's like a blessing and a curse of kind of where you get seen because people use us in lots of different ways. So I think that's kind of the trust piece has helped with the Australian Open, but we've got lots of different consumers. And again, people want us to just say that there's just one person or one type of person we're looking for. And it's just, we're not that straightforward.
Would you ever consider, for example, ditching the whole product line around the bottles and just focusing on hydration to be more easily understood with a single competitor set? Or is that detrimental to the overall strategy?
Look, I think from a customer acquisition perspective, focusing on hydration is the core. That's our core returning customer business. That is kind of like at the absolute heart of everything that we do. But again, it doesn't make sense because there's so much from as soon as you're at any event, and you see lots of hydration brands who don't sell drinkware or those things doing drinkware because they just need vessels to put stuff in, right? Or people want those things. So it is a nice complement. And I think it makes total sense for us to keep doing both. But certainly like our hero product is certainly the hydration cubes.
Your customer skews heavily towards higher income households with families of primary school aged children. That's quite a different profile to the broader hydration category. Is that intentional positioning? Is that something the data's revealed to you? Is that what works globally? How did you get there?
A combination. It's a little bit of what the data's revealed in terms of who's done it. I think it's a little bit around that kind of Australian Open audience as well. And I think it talks a little bit to the trends of drinkware and drinkware bottles being a coveted trend item. Certainly there just are global trends of if you've got the ability to make healthier choices that families might look for. We quite often compare ourselves sometimes to like the Nespresso of choosing something healthier or like choosing something that's beautiful and convenient, and kind of a nice item to have on your desk or a nice item to have in your house and to share with guests.
Yeah, nice. Looking back now, the last 3 years, I'm sure it's been a roller coaster journey deciding to launch a global brand into a local market and then getting up to speed and knowing your customer and iterating along the way. What would you say now to somebody, maybe a marketing director from overseas looking to launch into Australia? What's your top know-how?
I think find your channels and find your communities. I think not rushing into wholesale B2B distribution until you've got a market and a demand would also be kind of one of those key pieces, again, because of just the way that our market is set up here in terms of the major players, and comes with big price tags. So you really need kind of a loyal audience. When we launched into Woolworths, we activated our very engaged digital audience to make sure that there was lots of excitement and hype, and they were super excited, but kind of sending them all into Woolworths to get to buy the product, that was kind of critical to ensuring that we got good sales off the bat, and all these people asking all these Woolworths staff where our product was, so we kind of that was definitely powerful. So I definitely say people coming in doing that. From an operational perspective, and a very operational one, we've actually got our team split between Sydney, Melbourne, and then I'm up the coast as well. But I've really enjoyed having different team members in Melbourne and Sydney. I do think they're quite different ecosystems, and that's helped us from a networking perspective as well.
Yeah, great point.
Different circles and different people. I don't think you can quite often just get a bit Sydney or a bit Melbourne, right?
Yeah. Back to your earlier point around as a marketer, you're in your bubble. You've also got that geographic bubble layered over the top, when you layer over marketing and media and then Sydney-based or just Melbourne-based, you get into even more of a niche.
Yeah, and that people think they're everyone knows that, but it is like all things like with the AFL, it's a completely different down in Melbourne for some of those teams, right? That people have no idea about how that looks in Sydney.
What's AFL? No, when you think about overseas, so you think about Austria and HQ or other global locations where the brand is doing really well. Is there anything that they have activated or things, hunches or bets that they've taken that just you don't think would resonate locally?
The way that they're able to execute on retail, and I say retail in terms of owned waterdrop stores, we've not got there yet, Linz. Everything's so much closer and condensed in Europe. They can share assets. They have all of that benefit of being much closer together to be able to kind of implement things. So that's something that I'd really like to be able to emulate. We've not been able to kind of nail how we do our waterdrop stores here. Australian retail landscape and kind of shopping centre prices and all those different things is really, really intense.
Back to the brand tracking sort of conversation and tools that you use. How do you use brand health data to sort of have conversations with HQ? Are they also doing global brand tracking or not? Is it a reporting tool? Do you use it as a persuasion tool? Is it something else? How does it aid your conversations globally?
It is a combination. It definitely is used for shareholders and board meetings in terms of not justification, but just in terms of talking to market strength, market opportunity, and it's data, right? Everybody loves those points to be able to reference. They do their own global brand tracking. And so, Tracksuit, I think when we first started talking, wasn't set up for Germany and Austria, which is some of the biggest markets for us. So it now is. So that's something that we're looking at then to expand. And then, the other quite fun part is that actually we're we get to be a little bit more of like the agile guinea pig. Because we can kind of do things a little bit differently or try things, and then global will kind of take a look at what we're doing and say, actually, okay, that looks really interesting. And so I love that piece that we have, our Slack channels are kind of nuts in terms of sharing and information. So we do lots of that across countries.
If global do decide to go onto the Tracksuit platform, are there any benefits to you locally, or is it any easier for you to track things or have better quality conversations, or is it much the same as you do it now?
Look, it would be good that you all have similar baselines that you can know where you're sitting from but they're different competitive sets. So I think it would be beneficial that we're all kind of talking off the same pieces and that everyone gets much more familiar with the software, because I also think that's the other piece of there's lots of different ways you can pull it, and there's lots of different views and perspectives on it. So kind of everybody being much I think when everyone speaks the same software language.
Yeah.
it's instantly easier and better, right? Rather than people looking at lots of different data points and different reports, and you have to suddenly spend 20 minutes working out how all of that data was collected instead of talking about the data.
Yeah, great point. What's genuinely exciting you about where Waterdrop's heading? What's the chapter you haven't written yet? You mentioned before overseas do retail stores or standalone ones.
I mean, Lindsay, I want a fancy flagship store or 10 stores. Look, that chapter of having lots of stores across Australia would be exciting. I think they're huge, face-to-face moments I think are so critical, and that's one of the reasons that we've also loved being at the Australian Open, meeting customers. I absolutely adore that.
It's experiencing the brand, I guess, too. No longer just a product and a functional benefit, but sort of a brand ethos or an experience that you can share.
And having a home, to really create brand moments, I think is really special. So I think that chapter is going to be really interesting and really exciting for us. And we're just building to that. And ultimately, we're kind of strategically just going, we just need to right now make sure that people can buy us everywhere across Australia. So we're focusing on that as the first piece, that kind of, it doesn't matter if you're in this small town in WA, there's a shop that has us. So we're focusing on that because that person wouldn't care if we have a gorgeous store in Bondi Junction. That's only a certain audience. So we're trying to kind of layer it to get the most to as much of our community as possible, and then start using those assets to build new communities and new audiences.
You mentioned before you're up against competitors that have a huge spend, whether that's advertising or they've got, huge distribution.
Massive backing, yeah.
Yeah. How do you think about that from a challenger perspective with that sort of, I guess, startup mentality? And what is it about you that has made you excel from that perspective?
I think I've got a really healthy fear of making the right decisions. And I guess I've also, from my experience, my background, I've got years of experience for spending other people's money, other businesses' money, which people can say is a good or bad thing, right? That people might not take it seriously. But ultimately that makes or breaks a client campaign. So there's a huge amount of trust and value of going into what that means. So I've got that kind of healthy approach to it. And then obviously when you've got skin in the game, you also do look at every cost differently, of kind of saying, does that make sense? But I've also made some really bad decisions, Linz. I've definitely made a few deals or signed a few contracts, or not contracts necessarily, but signed a few deals, or thought that it looked like a good deal, and I was kind of trusting what I was being told, and then realized that actually it was a terrible deal and I've paid far too much for something. So you just have to, at some point, trust that the people that you're dealing with are good brokers, and get, a bit wiser to it sometimes as well.
Tell me a bit about company values, global values. Are there things that ring true at a global level, cross countries, and things that you've seen here in Australia that are the DNA of the business? Or have you had to almost like fine tune the essence of values so that they're more relatable here? Like, what stands true globally, and what from that perspective have you had to shift?
Values, Waterdrop has these 5 beautiful values that they actually redid them in the last year and kind of refreshed them and did lots of workshops. And what I feel is that they've done a really good job of being able to permeate that through all the different countries. And so I've spent some time in Vienna with the team, and the founders kind of embody them. And I know that sounds really cheesy, and that's maybe what everyone says around values, but it's part of their success that you do kind of, one of my team just recently went to the Vienna head office, and there was kind of this conversation about just how, he felt like he embodied the values, that like, that's how you're kind of choosing. It's the same with one of ours is like find a way, and that like whole approach that everyone will like literally say it to each other, just being like, okay, this feels really, really hard, but we'll find a way. And that's just something that we do there. So I think if they're said enough and they're made and they're actually built into the culture, and that's how people are chosen to be hired, then I think it works really well. And one of the other ones is be the customer. And that was like right from the start, Martin, the founder, said to me, he said, Kat, phone the first 20 customers, phone them, find out what they think of the product, talk to them, and, do that whole experience. And I've never kind of let go of that piece of like, we all need to understand what it feels like to be a customer. And that's one of our core values.
Love. Picking up the phone is just so underrated, I think, in business. Understanding and all the little tidbits and things people say can unlock a massive insight or a massive approach. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually just find out what people thought of it. Like, how did it look?
Yeah.
what did it arrive like? Did you like it? Did you think this? So I think that piece, Linz, is really good to just stay close to, but obviously at scale that's hard.
Yeah, I think, in some ways, marketers and agencies can be guilty of everything we say outwards, and we just think it will land, and or we hope it will land. But I guess turning the table, being a little bit humble, and did it land? Talking to customers, this is our intent. Was that what you found? And if it wasn't, then it's a good look in the mirror.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had a year to dedicate to one business or brand problem, what would you focus on and why?
I mean, I find supermarkets wildly complex. And I think category conversation around where we sit on a shelf in a supermarket is super complex. So probably I would love to spend some time with people who run supermarkets. And I would love to understand all of these different points of what works on shelf and how they make decisions and when they create different categories or what buyers and how they all work together. I think it's highly complex, and I've learned quite a lot, but I'm certainly at the start of that journey. I think I could spend weeks and months trying to work out what they have. They have so much data at their fingertips as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When you look back at the last 3 years launching the brand into Australia locally, what has been your proudest moment? A micro moment that you've thought, this is awesome, this is working.
I mean, we had one recently where we did a survey out to our database, and we just got incredible feedback. And one of the kind of key feedback points was just that, people loving the taste. And you just kind of go, that's at its core, right? It's super simple, that we're just creating a great product. That was fantastic to see. But I mean, my ultimate moments is standing at the AO and listening to customers talk about the product, and someone walking by and not realizing that I've got anything to do with it and being like, oh, that's waterdrop. I've got to have that. And you kind of just standing there going, oh my goodness, that's so exciting. You want to buy our product, and just listening to people. So yeah.
Love it. What's your hunch? What's the thing you believe about brand or about building waterdrop in Australia that the data doesn't fully support yet, but you think is true?
The product in hand is the most important, but if you don't watch people take the product, that one's a really difficult one to work out the value of sampling, dry sampling. I know that sounds kind of strange, but instead of you watching and serving people a drink, I feel like it's so important to be able to get that out to people. But if you're not curating that experience, that's a difficult one. So that's one that I kind of just go back and forth on, of the value of sending product to people. Because you really, if you don't know that they've tried it, you could just be going out to the ether, right? And then suddenly it's you've kind of just wasted that piece. So that's always quite difficult to make a call on, of when do you kind of do that product gifting or piecing when you're not controlling the sampling. I don't know that I know that it works. That's the bit. And then it's really hard to track how valuable that was.
Short of you forcing a drink down their throat.
Totally.
I hope this lands in the way that it was intended.
Yeah, so it's kind of that piece of it's a very difficult one to track, the value of when we've done gifting en masse to people.
How have you thought about getting the product into the hands of whether it's influencers, creators, people of importance, or even just more customers? How do you think about that?
We're all about product in hand. So we do but again, we've kind of done it based on relationships and where it fits. And we use up the global social channels, and they do lots with influencers. That's been one of those pieces that we've strategically chosen to kind of let them with their budgets do more of that. And it's definitely an area and a chapter that we're kind of going to be writing over the next year, 2 years in Australia to build out more of our own local network. We've built some fantastic relationships with creators, and honestly, it comes back to people kind of genuinely talking to us about them liking the product. And we go from there of building a relationship rather than kind of just saying, we need to have you say that you love this product and we're going to pay you $50,000 to do so. I think there's a balance there.
That's an interesting one. You mentioned about the stages or the chapters of brand building and knowing when to pull different levers. How do you think about that? Where do you sit? I mean, you're 3 years in, you'd argue you're no longer really foundational. You've got some great foundations that you're building on now. Yeah. What's the current chapter, and what's ahead for you? What you mentioned, influencers are sort of something you've not tried yet but are in your future. How do you know when to pull the trigger on that?
Yeah, and that one's been controversial, Linz, because people have been saying to us from the start, and we've done bits. I think it's just that it has been journeys. And then because of our partnership with the Australian Open, the major thing for us is that we've tried to just continually use assets available to us as much as possible. But so because we've had the brand vehicle of the Australian Open, if we hadn't have had that, we might have then chosen to say, actually, we're going to go after this very key influencer or these 5 influencers, and then that's our strategy for the next 12 months. And that they will do our marketing and heavy lifting for us to their audiences. So I think it's just, we're now starting to stack our brand vehicles and how many we have in play. And I think that's probably the piece of just kind of saying, what is your top of funnel strategy? And you can't do 10 things.
What are you going to do well at, quality and do it well?
Yeah. And try and just kind of keep that quite tight. But now we're starting to expand above that, because then you're starting to get the kind of the weight beneath it, and we've got more distribution and we've got more mental availability, and people can access us on all those pieces.
Amazing. It has been incredible hearing all about your journey from agency land. There are so many senior marketers I talk to that would love to jump in and kind of run their own thing. And I feel like you've played to your strengths with your, background in D2C, digital, and bringing that over into the early days of waterdrop, then operationalizing and growing the brand. It's been a really enjoyable story and can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you, Lindsay.
My key takeaway from chatting with Kat today was the chapters in the waterdrop brand story and what she's choosing to focus on and saying no to everything else. I think that's such a discipline in a world of everything's possible. But when you're a challenger brand up against behemoths, you really have to place some bets that are unique, different, and go deep and quality on a few rather than spraying and hoping they all come to fruition. So really admire her courage in saying no to a lot of channels and opportunities and focusing on the stage of brand growth in the local market for now.